Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a journey deep into the engine rooms of global trade.
Right into the heart of the machine.
Exactly. We're talking about those massive container ships, the tankers, basically the backbone of the global economy. But there's a silent killer lurking in their fuel line.
A microscopic one. And it's causing millions of dollars in damage.
That's it. We are diving deep into what the industry calls CAT fines, catalytic fines.
And this is a really critical topic. It's not just about some simple impurity in fuel anymore. We're talking about something that can bring global shipping to a halt, one engine at a time.
That intensity is exactly why we're here. You sent over a stack of sources that really paint a picture of this radical shift in marine fuel quality, the geopolitical pressures, and the need for some seriously sophisticated risk management. So our mission today is to figure out why a ship's engine is so much more vulnerable now than it was, say, 5 years ago.
And crucially, what operators can actually do to protect these billion-dollar assets.
So where does this story start?
You really have to rewind to 2020. That was the year the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, brought in the global sulfur cap.
The 0.5% limit, right.
For cleaner air.
Exactly. A great move for the environment, but it created a huge operational headache. It forced the entire industry to switch from a very known, very consistent, heavy fuel oil
To this new stuff.
very low sulfur fuel oil, or VLSFO.
So a positive environmental rule had this completely unintended consequence.
It's in a nutshell. The old fuel, it had its problems, but you knew what you were getting. In VLSFO it's more like a cocktail.
Yeah.
It's a complex blend of different refinery streams all mixed together to hit that sulfur target.
Which means it's not consistent.
Not at all. And then on top of that, you throw in major geopolitical events.
Like the conflict in Ukraine.
Precisely. That just completely
Right.
scrambled the supply chains. Refineries suddenly had to use different crude oil feedstocks, which led to even more inconsistency in the fuel quality you'd find from port to port. So you have a new complex fuel being made with inconsistent ingredients under a ton of pressure.
That is the perfect storm. That's the genesis of the modern cat fine crisis.
Okay, let's get into the chemistry of VLSFO itself, because that's where this villain, the cat fine, gets introduced. How is this blended fuel actually made?
Yeah, to get the sulfur that low, refiners have to use more advanced processes. They use products from what are called cracking units. One of the main ingredients they blend in is called heavy cycle oil, or HCO.
And HCO is the risky part.
It's a big part of the risk, yeah. HCO comes from the fluid catalytic cracking unit, the FCC. And that process uses a super fine powdered catalyst to, crack long hydrocarbon molecules.
And that catalyst is?
It's mostly aluminum and silicon oxides. And while the refinery gets most of it out, some of these tiny microscopic particles just stay in the fuel.
And that's a cat fine.
That is a cat fine. It's leftover dust from the refining process. So the more of these cracked components you use to make VLSFO, the higher your risk of cat fines.
Okay, so how small are we talking, and what makes them so dangerous?
They're tiny, often smaller than a human hair, maybe 10 or 20 microns. But the real danger isn't the size, it's what they're made of.
The aluminum and silicon.
Right. If you look at the Mohs scale of hardness, these particles are somewhere between a 6 and a 9.
6 to 9. For people who aren't geologists, what does that compare to?
Well, at the high end, it's approaching the hardness of a diamond.
Wow.
Yeah. And the steel alloys used in these high precision engine parts, they're much, much softer, maybe a 5 on the Mohs scale.
So you have microscopic particles that are literally harder than diamond.
Oh, close to it, yeah.
Being blasted through engine components that are made of softer metal at incredibly high pressures.
Now you see the problem. It basically turns the fuel system into a grinding mill.
Let's shift to that, the real world consequences. How does this diamond dust physically destroy an engine?
It attacks the parts with the tightest, most precise tolerances first. So think high pressure fuel pumps. The plungers and barrels in those pumps, they fit together with the precision of, like a Swiss watch. That's how you get injection pressures of 1,000, maybe 2,000 bar.
I can't even imagine that kind of pressure.
And when you force cat fines through there, they just act like sandpaper. They shred the surfaces, destroy the seals.
And then what?
You get leaks, you lose pressure, the fuel doesn't atomize properly, and your engine efficiency just tanks.
And what if they get past the pump and injectors?
That's when things get really bad. If they make it into the combustion chamber, they get trapped between the piston rings and the cylinder liner.
Oh no!
Yeah. As the piston goes up and down thousands of times a minute, these particles just carve deep grooves into the metal. It's called scoring.
Yeah, and that leads to
Loss of compression. The engine can't hold pressure anymore. You get blow-by, where combustion gases leak past the rings, contaminating your lube oil. The engine is literally eating itself from the inside out.
There was a really shocking case study in the sources you sent, the one about the container vessel. Can you walk us through that?
I can't. It was a large container ship, a bunkered VLSFO in a major Asian port. The lab tests came back a little while later.
And the news wasn't good.
The news is terrible. The cat fine levels were way over the ISO AT17 international limit, which is 60 milligrams per kilogram.
And these samples showed.
They were showing upwards of 75 and in some cases even 100 parts per million.
So that's what, 25 to over 60% above the legal limit? That's terrifying.
It is. And even though the ship had a good fuel treatment system, it was just overwhelmed. The concentration was too high. The crew started noticing problems with the engine almost right away.
What did they find when they inspected it?
Extensive scoring on multiple cylinder liners. Piston rings were completely worn down. They had to do a partial engine overhaul.
And the real cost isn't just the parts, is it?
Not even close. The real cost is the downtime. That ship was off hire for over 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks of not earning any money.
Exactly. For a ship that size, you're easily into the high 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures, in lost revenue and repair costs, all from one bad batch of fuel.
It really proves that just buying compliant fuel isn't enough. You need quality fuel.
That is the lesson right there.
So that brings us to the defense. The bad fuel is on the ship. What can the crew do?
Okay, so the defense is layered. The very first barrier is the settling tank. It's all about time and temperature.
You have to heat the fuel up.
You have to. VLSFO is thick, so you heat it to, say, 40 to 60 degrees Celsius to lower its viscosity, make it runnier.
So the particles can sink.
Exactly. Gravity does the first bit of work. You let the heavy cat fines settle to the bottom, and then you have to be religious about draining the sludge and water from the tank.
Okay, that's layer one. What's next? The purifiers.
The centrifugal purifiers. This is the core defense, but they have to be operated perfectly.
What does perfectly mean in this case?
It means two things. First, even higher temperature. You need to get that VLSFO up to 85, maybe even 98 degrees Celsius.
Nearly boiling.
Almost. That makes the viscosity drop way down so the centrifugal force can work its magic and sling the dense cat fines out of the fuel.
And the second thing?
The flow rate. This is absolutely critical. You have to run the purifiers at the manufacturer's specified low throughput.
So you have to run them slower. That feels wrong.
I know it's counterintuitive, but if you push the fuel through too fast, the particles don't have enough time to get separated out. You have to slow it down to maximize the residence time in the purifier bowl. That's how you catch the really small stuff.
And what's the very last line of defense?
The final filters, right before the engine. Usually very fine filters, maybe 5 or 10 microns. They're like the goalie. They catch anything that somehow slipped past the centrifuges.
And the crew has to just watch them constantly?
Pretty much. They monitor the pressure difference across the filters. If that pressure suddenly spikes, it means the filters are getting clogged with cat fines and you have to act immediately.
This all sounds like a race against time. A traditional lab test takes days, right?
It does. And that's the Achilles heel. By the time the lab calls you and says you have a problem, you've already burned half the fuel.
So what's the solution?
The solution is real-time, onboard monitoring. And the technology is finally getting there. We're seeing systems like low-field NMR sensors being installed.
NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance.
Yeah, but a simplified, ruggedized version. It basically uses a magnetic field to analyze the fuel as it's flowing through the pipe.
And it can detect the cat fines?
It can detect the aluminum and silicon. It gives the engineer a live parts per million reading right there on a screen in the engine control room.
So they can see a spike the moment it happens?
The moment it happens. And they can immediately adjust, slow the purifiers, increase the heat, whatever it takes. It turns a potential catastrophe into a manageable problem.
This seems like it's not just an engine room problem, though. It starts with buying the fuel.
It absolutely does. This is a procurement and supply chain issue at its core.
So how do you stop the bad fuel from ever getting on board?
Well, the official rule, the ISO 8217 standard, says the max limit is 60 parts per million for aluminum plus silicon at delivery.
But, as we just learned from that case study, 60 ppm can still wreck an engine.
It absolutely can. And the best operators know this. They don't just aim for compliant fuel, they aim for high quality fuel. They set much stricter internal limits.
Like what?
They might aim for something like 15 or 20 ppm at the engine inlet.
Yeah.
That gives them a huge safety margin.
And to get that, you have to be picky about your suppliers.
You have to be ruthless. You can't just buy on price anymore. You have to vet your suppliers, check their quality assurance programs, demand certificates of quality for every single delivery.
And you have to test it yourself.
You must. Mandate pre-consumption testing. Take a sample as the fuel is coming on board and send it to an independent lab immediately.
What's the strategic value of that test? It still takes time.
It does, but it does three things. One, it verifies if you got what you paid for. Two, it gives you bulletproof legal evidence if the fuel causes damage.
And three,
it gives your crew a heads up. If the results come back high, they know they have to run their purification system on maximum defense mode before that fuel even hits the engine. It's a tiny investment to protect a multi-million-dollar asset.
The big picture here seems pretty clear. The old days of just, pumping and burning heavy fuel oil are long gone.
They're over, completely over. Operating safely today means integrating everything, procurement, advanced onboard tech, and just relentless, rigorous operational discipline.
It seems like every time the industry makes a positive change, like for the environment, it creates a whole new set of these really complex physical challenges.
That's a great observation. It's the law of unintended consequences.
So if managing VLSFO and a known enemy like cat fines is this hard, what does that mean for the future as we move to totally new fuels?
And that is the perfect question to end on. It's a big, provocative thought. We have spent, a decade now learning how to get this microscopic ceramic dust out of our fuel.
Right.
But as the industry pushes towards zero carbon fuels, things like LNG, methanol, ammonia, what new, totally unknown contaminants are we going to face? What kind of stability problems or corrosion issues will pop up that we haven't even thought of yet?
So the lesson from cat fines is really about being ready for the next unknown threat.
Exactly. It's about building systems and training crews to be resilient, because the next crisis is always just over the horizon. Preparedness has to be forward-looking.
A fascinating and frankly a slightly terrifying thought. Thank you for guiding us through this. A truly crucial deep dive into an invisible threat that keeps the world moving.